Maryland just made it illegal for grocery stores to set your prices based on who you are.
2 floors moved this week. The federal floor came down. The state floors went up.
Yeah, and if the federal floor is dropping, it basically means that national safety net we all just, take for granted is fundamentally shifting.
Right. And meanwhile, state legislatures aren't just raising their own floors. In some cases, they're like building trampolines to catch people who are falling through the cracks.
Welcome to the 10th. This is your Sunday morning briefing on what 50 state legislatures and Congress actually did this week.
Yeah, consider this your essential briefing for the week that was and, the week that's coming.
Exactly. And a quick note before we jump in. This show is brought to you by Amendment at amendment.app.
So we really need to look closely at what happened in just the last 7 days because while the national spotlight was pointed at, protests and press conferences.
Which it always is.
Right. The actual mechanical day-to-day laws that govern consumer rights, job mobility, healthcare, all of that moved at lightning speed at the state level.
Which brings us right back to Maryland and that massive consumer protection shift I mentioned at the top.
Yeah. So Governor Wes Moore just signed HB 895, spoken, that's House Bill 895.
Okay.
And this makes Maryland the very first state in the country to ban something called surveillance pricing.
Surveillance pricing.
Yeah, at grocery stores and pharmacies. Because, look, I think most people assume that a $4 box of cereal just, costs $4 for everyone.
Right. You walk in, you see the tag, that's the price.
But that assumption it's rapidly becoming obsolete. Surveillance pricing is this practice of using your hyper-specific personal data to calculate the absolute maximum that you individually are willing to pay for an item.
Oh, wow.
And then charging you that exact amount. So the store's algorithm pulls in data from your loyalty card, your phone's location history.
Wait, location history.
Yeah, location, past purchase behavior, and sometimes even your device's battery level or IP address.
That's insane.
So if the system knows you, say, always buy premium coffee and you're currently shopping in a wealthy zip code, your digital shelf tag might literally display $14.
While the person standing right next to me sees like $11.
Exactly.
I mean, it's like a digital version of a car salesman sizing up your watch and your shoes before quoting you a price.
Yeah.
But it's happening in, microseconds in the produce aisle.
Right. It's an extreme information asymmetry. So House Bill 895 addresses this by requiring grocers to hold their posted prices for at least one full business day.
Okay, so those electronic shelf labels can't just dynamically spike the price of umbrellas while you're walking down the aisle simply because it started raining outside.
Exactly. And crucially, it carries teeth. I mean, the penalty is a $25,000 fine per violation.
Per violation, wow. And I noticed the vote count on this was staggering. It passed 100 to 31 in the House and 41 to 1 in the Senate.
Yeah, that kind of bipartisan consensus, it usually only happens when a practice is universally despised.
Truly.
Yeah.
And Maryland is just the first of 5 states to cross a first-in-the-nation finish line this week. Let's look at Washington State for a second. Governor Bob Ferguson signed HB 1155.
Right. House Bill 1155.
Yeah, which establishes a near-total ban on non-compete agreements statewide.
The mechanism here is what's really important, though, because Washington's previous law only banned non-competes for workers earning under, I think, $116,000 a year.
Right.
This new law essentially scraps that threshold completely. But the context is everything here. Washington passed this immediately after the Federal Trade Commission. The FTC saw its national rule banning non-competes get frozen by federal court challenges.
So the moment the federal government hit a wall, the state just, absorb the momentum and pass it for their own residents anyway.
Precisely. We're seeing states act as the ultimate failsafe.
I want to test that theory on what just happened in Hawaii, actually.
Right.
Because the state Senate there just cleared SB 1166, Senate Bill 1166.
Yeah, this is a big one.
It is. This would let local insurers sue major fossil fuel companies for climate disaster payouts. And I have to admit, the mechanics of this confuse me a bit.
How so?
Well, how does an insurance company in Maui walk into a courtroom and prove that one specific oil company in Texas caused one specific wildfire?
Right. Okay, so it relies on a rapidly advancing field called attribution science,
Okay.
combined with what the legal world calls a private right of action.
Which is what exactly?
It just means a law that gives private citizens or private companies the legal authority to sue someone else.
Got it.
So actuaries and climate scientists can now model how specific historical carbon emissions from known companies altered the atmospheric conditions to make a local disaster, like the 2023 Maui wildfires, diametrically more likely.
Oh, wow. So they have the math to back it up now.
Exactly. And remember, after those fires, home insurance rates in Hawaii shot up by like 54%.
Yep.
Insurers are just drowning.
Right.
So SB 1166 gives them the legal mechanism to try and recoup those specific localized payouts from the fossil fuel industry itself, rather than just collapsing or passing the cost on to local homeowners.
That is wild. The state is literally trying to balance the books of a global climate issue on a localized balance sheet.
Yeah, they are.
And we saw two other firsts this week, too. Maine passed LD 2082, Legislative Document 2082, which bars AI from acting as a therapist.
Right.
And Vermont advanced H.R. 849, House Bill 849, which allows citizens to sue officials in state court for constitutional rights violations on the job.
Yeah, we'll dig into the AI one in a minute, for sure.
We will, yeah. But first, let's look at the other side of our central equation here. Because the state floors are clearly going up, but the federal floor came down.
Yeah, and we have to start the Supreme Court for that. The court ruled 6-3 to strike down a black majority congressional district. And it's a move that legal scholars across the board say fundamentally guts Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act.
So for a listener who might not spend their Sunday mornings, reading federal election law, what exactly is Section 2 and what makes this ruling such a huge structural shift?
Good question. So Section 2 is the provision of the 1965 Voting Rights Act that prohibits voting practices or procedures that discriminate on the basis of race.
Okay.
Practically speaking, it's the tool that has allowed voters to sue when a state map is drawn in a way that dilutes minority voting power.
Usually through, gerrymandering tactics.
Yeah, often through a tactic called cracking, where a minority community is essentially split apart into multiple districts so they can never form a majority in any single one of them.
Right.
So for nearly 60 years, Section 2 has been this hard federal floor underneath every single state's redistricting process.
But this week, the court essentially decided that that provision can no longer be used to require a black majority district, even where the local geography clearly supports one.
Correct.
I was actually reading Justice Lena Kagan's dissent on this.
Yeah.
And she was incredibly blunt about it.
Oh, absolutely. She wrote that Section 2 is now, quote, all but a dead letter.
Wow.
Yeah. The practical mechanical result of this dropped federal floor is that states are now legally permitted, and in many cases, they're already preparing to redraw their congressional maps under this new lowered standard before the midterm elections.
And the House of Representatives moved just as aggressively this week to lower another baseline.
They did.
Yeah. They voted 235 to 191 to reauthorize FISA Section 702. And then the Senate just passed it right before midnight deadline.
Right. So Section 702 is the surveillance authority that allows U.S. intelligence agencies to collect the communications of foreigners abroad without a warrant.
Which sounds fine on paper, but...
Exactly. The mechanical problem here, and the reason civil liberties advocates fight this so fiercely, is a process called incidental collection.
Because if a foreign target emails or calls an American citizen, that American's data gets scooped into the federal database too.
Yes. And then intelligence agencies can query that massive database for the American's name or their phone number completely without needing to go to a judge for a warrant.
And the House vote explicitly rejected an amendment that would have required a warrant for those domestic searches, right?
Yep. They voted it down, so the federal privacy floor dropped.
There's also this story of a floor dropping through sheer, basically, inaction.
Yeah.
The 60-day War Powers Act clock regarding the conflict with Iran expired on May 1st. The Senate rejected a resolution to end the conflict, so the deadline just came and went.
Right, and legal scholars are pointing out that continuing military engagement past that deadline without affirmative congressional authorization technically breaks federal law.
But Congress they simply chose not to hold another vote.
Right, passivity in Washington, D.C. has essentially become a policy choice of its own.
Wow. Okay, I want to ask you about a pretty bizarre procedural move in the Senate regarding environmental protections.
No, the boundary waters.
Yes. The Senate voted 50 to 49 to revoke a 20-year mineral mining ban situated right next to the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness in Minnesota.
Right.
And they did this via HJRES 140, House Joint Resolution 140. But wait, I thought overturning federal rules in the Senate required a 60-vote supermajority to break a filibuster.
Usually, yes.
So how on earth did they do this with 50 votes?
Okay, so they utilized a procedural loophole called the Congressional Review Act, or the CRA.
Okay, what is that?
The CRA is this tool that allows Congress to overturn a rule created by a federal agency, in the specific case, the Department of the Interior.
Gotcha.
And they can do it with a simple majority vote. It bypasses the filibuster entirely. It's essentially a legislative fast pass.
A fast pass, okay.
So with just 50 votes, that resolution now heads straight to the president's desk.
Man. And rounding out the federal action, H.R. 2616 spoke, and H.R. 2616, the Protect Kids Act, advanced out of the House Rules Committee.
Right.
And this requires public elementary and middle schools to get parental consent before changing a student's pronouns, preferred name, or bathroom access.
Yeah, so when you look at the aggregate of Washington, D.C. this week, you really see a consistent lowering or complete removal of federal baselines across voting maps, digital surveillance data, war powers oversight, and environmental protections.
Yeah, 2 floors moved this week. The federal floor came down. The state floors went up.
Exactly.
Because if Washington is lowering these baselines, who is catching the people falling through the cracks? It really feels like the states are being forced to act as emergency responders, especially in healthcare.
They absolutely are.
And before we look at those specific medical bills, just a quick reminder that you can track all of these fast-moving state bills we're dissecting today at amendment.app.
So what we're witnessing right now is the acceleration of Justice Louis Brandeis's famous concept of the laboratories of democracy. Yeah, Brandeis argued that a single courageous state could serve as a laboratory, basically trying a novel social and economic experiments without risk to the rest of the country.
Right.
And because there are no massive federal patient protection packages coming down the pipeline right now, those laboratories are operating at maximum capacity.
We totally saw that in Mississippi.
Yeah.
The state legislature there unanimously passed SB 2474, Senate Bill 2474, to create a rare disease task force designed specifically to evaluate and fix insurance coverage gaps.
Right. And to understand why this requires state intervention, you kind of have to look at how health insurance physically functions.
Okay.
Actuarial tables require massive pools of predictable data to spread out financial risk, right? But rare diseases, by definition, have tiny sample sizes.
So the standard insurance model just completely breaks down.
It shatters. I mean, patients with rare diseases often need therapies that just don't fit into standard billing codes. Getting an insurer to cover them is a total nightmare.
Right.
So the fact that not a single Mississippi lawmaker voted against this task force, it shows how catastrophic that failure has become at the local level.
Yeah, and we saw similar intervention in New Jersey with 2188, Assembly Bill 2188.
Right.
It mandates that every prenatal and postpartum provider screen for preeclampsia within 12 weeks of birth.
Which is huge.
It is, because that timeline is vital. Postpartum preeclampsia is a leading cause of maternal death, and roughly 60% of those deaths are completely preventable if they're caught in that specific window.
Exactly.
But the healthcare bill that really caught my eye this week was out of Alabama. Governor Kay Ivey signed HB 605, House Bill 605.
The antitrust waiver.
Yes, it's an antitrust waiver that lets struggling rural hospitals share staff, share equipment, and even consolidate back office systems. And it passed unanimously in both chambers.
Yeah.
But wait, isn't the whole point of antitrust law to stop hospitals from combining so they don't form monopolies and just jack up prices on everybody?
Well, under normal economic conditions in a major city, yes. If two massive hospital networks merge, they dominate the market and prices skyrocket for patients.
Right, that's the standard fear.
But rural healthcare operates under survival economics.
Oh.
Yeah, rural hospitals across the South are drowning in debt and physically closing their doors. If they don't combine their purchasing power and share specialized doctors, the alternative isn't a competitive market.
Right.
The alternative is 0 hospital beds within a 50-mile radius.
Oh, wow. I hadn't thought about it like that. So it's basically a legal buddy system just to keep them afloat.
Exactly. Alabama's law explicitly shields them from state and federal antitrust lawsuits so they can throw each other a lifeline.
That makes total sense. Meanwhile, in California, SB 915, Senate Bill 915, is moving forward.
Right.
This restricts ICE agents from staying in patient hospital rooms during medical exams, and it bars hospitals from letting immigration agents serve as interpreters for patients.
Yeah.
So again, you just aren't seeing comprehensive federal patient protection packages on rare diseases, or maternal mortality, or rural hospital survival coming out of Congress. The states are writing those protections, literally one law at a time.
Yeah, but that laboratories of democracy approach isn't confined to healthcare either.
Right.
We're seeing it aggressively move into technology, too. Tech regulation is finally descending from high-level abstract ethical debates down into the very concrete physical layer of town zoning and professional licensing.
Which brings us back to that Maine AI law we teased earlier, LD 2082.
Yes.
Because I was looking at how this is written, and it fascinated me. Why put an artificial intelligence regulation buried inside a mental health licensing statute instead of just passing a broad tech bill?
Because a broad tech bill is incredibly difficult to enforce.
Okay.
Whereas a licensing board has immediate punitive power over a professional's livelihood.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right. LD 2082 clearly separates AI as a tool from AI as a provider. It essentially tells licensed therapists, you can use AI to schedule your appointments or synthesize your session notes, provided the client gives written consent.
But the AI cannot make therapeutic decisions or talk directly to the clients acting as the therapist.
Correct. If a clinic tries to replace a human therapist with a chatbot just to save money, the human license holder faces a $10,000 fine per violation.
Wow.
Yeah, state regulation has shifted from, let's study the ethics of AI, to an algorithm cannot hold this specific human medical license.
Which is so much more practical. And, you might think AI regulation is just a Silicon Valley problem.
Yeah.
But when you look at the physical infrastructure required to run these programs, it gets incredibly immediate for everyone else.
Oh, absolutely.
Because in Pennsylvania, the House just passed HB 2151, House Bill 2151, by a vote of 124 to 77. This bill drafts a statewide model data center zoning ordinance.
Yeah, because small towns in Pennsylvania are suddenly staring down 20 or more proposed hyperscale data center projects.
They're massive.
They're huge. Generative AI requires massive servers running constantly, and those servers generate intense heat. A single data center can consume millions of gallons of water a day just for cooling.
Millions of gallons.
Yeah, not to mention the immense draw on the local power grid and the constant deafening hum of the cooling fans.
So if you live in one of these towns, AI regulation isn't abstract at all. It's literally about whether water comes out of your tap tomorrow morning.
Exactly.
And small town mayors don't have existing zoning templates for that kind of industrial scale. So the state is just writing the template for them.
Right.
But let me ask you this. When a massive state like Pennsylvania writes a zoning standard, or Maryland fines grocery stores $25,000, does this state-level patchwork eventually force federal action?
Yes, it creates an intense preemption pressure cooker. Because once Maryland enforces its surveillance pricing ban, national grocery chains have to fundamentally alter their inventory software to comply, right?
Right. They can't just run two systems easily.
Exactly. And once Pennsylvania writes a water usage standard for data centers, neighboring states usually just copy it.
Makes sense.
So the states ship the laws first, creating this chaotic patchwork of compliance that eventually frustrates massive tech and retail corporations so deeply that they march into Congress and practically beg the federal government to step in and write one preemptive national rule just to simplify their operations.
So it's the Brandeis Laboratory essentially forcing the federal hand.
Precisely.
Okay, now before we wrap up, I really want to look at a category of laws that might actually be the most important of the week.
Yeah, the quiet ones.
Exactly. Beyond the massive tech shifts and the healthcare lifelines, states are quietly fixing foundational, everyday systems with near-unanimous agreement. These are stories completely ignored by national news.
Totally ignored. Let's start in Iowa. The Iowa House voted 90-0 to write play-based learning into state law.
Yeah, this is HF 2652, House File 2652.
Okay.
It guarantees pre-K and preschool students at least 90 minutes of unstructured, child-directed play per half-day session.
Wow.
And kindergartners are guaranteed at least 45 minutes. And the law explicitly states that standard physical education classes and scheduled recess do not count toward this requirement.
I mean, it is stunning to see a 90-0 vote in an incredibly polarized election year.
Right.
Why is a state legislature literally legislating the right for children to play?
Well, because over the last 2 decades, intense academic standards and standardized testing were basically pushed down into early childhood education.
Which stressed everyone out.
Yeah, and the developmental science is now universally clear that stripping clay from 5-year-olds actually harms their cognitive and social development.
Wow.
So this vote shows a unified recognition of that science at the state level,
Yeah.
completely disconnected from the partisan gridlock we see nationally. That is so refreshing. And our second under-the-radar vote happened in Connecticut.
Right.
The Connecticut House voted 142-2 to drop the licensing exam for new master social workers. HB 5166, House Bill 5166, removes the ASWB exam requirement.
Yeah.
But wait, if we are facing a massive mental health crisis in this country, doesn't dropping the licensing exam lower the standard for the actual people treating us?
You'd think so, but no, because the rigorous Master of Social Work degree program itself is the standard.
Okay.
Data revealed that the ASWB exam was basically an arbitrary, culturally biased bottleneck. Black and Hispanic candidates, as well as older candidates, were failing the exam at significantly higher rates than younger white candidates.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, the test wasn't evaluating who would make a good social worker. It was evaluating who was good at taking standardized tests.
And these candidates were probably paying hundreds of dollars in fees every time they had to retake it, effectively just locking them out of the profession.
Exactly. And meanwhile, Connecticut is facing a deepening shortage of social workers.
Right.
So by removing the exam, they are eliminating an inequitable barrier and trusting the actual academic curriculum to serve as the qualification.
142-2. I mean,
Right.
These are the quiet, essential changes affecting the daily lives of families and professionals that are just entirely ignored by the cable news cycle.
Which perfectly captures the profound contrast of the week, really.
Yeah.
Look at the public pressure signals, specifically the ResistBot leaderboards where citizens send messages to their representatives.
What do they show?
The data reveals a stark pattern. Americans are directing all of their petitions, their outrage, and their energy at federal inaction.
Really?
Yeah, they're focused entirely on the SCOTUS Voting Rights Act ruling, the FISA surveillance fight, and the expiration of the Iran War Powers Act.
But while all that public pressure is aimed at a paralyzed Washington, D.C., the state legislatures are quietly and often unanimously writing the actual laws that dictate our daily reality. 2 floors moved this week. The federal floor came down. The state floors went up. And maybe next time you walk into a grocery store and look at a digital price tag, you'll wonder exactly which floor you're standing on. You've been listening to The 10th. For the full text, status, and plain English breakdown of any bill we mentioned today, head to amendment.app.